Welcome to the Highlights Show. I'm Phil Kessler.
And I'm Amy Ryan. It's great to be here.
Okay, so I just finished watching that ILO session on the disability pay gap.
Wow.
Yeah.
Me too.
It was quite something.
It really was. I mean, we know there are gaps, obviously, but the way they laid out the scale of it globally, the economic disadvantage for people with disabilities, it just felt huge, systemic.
Absolutely. It kind of forces you to reset how you think about workplace equity, doesn't it?
Totally.
And the ILO research, it wasn't just saying, oh, people with disabilities earn less. It was showing how heavily they're stuck in the lowest wage groups worldwide.
Right. That baseline is just sobering.
It really is.
Okay, so let's maybe unpack this a bit for you, the listener, because there was one statistical point that really jumped out at me. The aha moment, if you will.
Go on.
They were saying that a really big chunk of this pay gap, it can't be explained by the usual things, like education level or years of experience or even where someone lives. None of that fully accounts for it. Exactly. And that's critical because economists, when they model wages, they try to control for everything measurable that should affect pay skills, time on the job, all that stuff.
Right, the merit stuff.
Yeah. And if the gap was just about those things, the models would mostly explain it, but they don't. There's this big residual amount left over.
That unexplained part, that's pretty damning, isn't it?
It's basically the strongest evidence we have. In economic terms, when you've accounted for all the known productivity factors and there's still a big gap, the model basically points its finger at things you can't easily measure, like bias or outright discrimination. It suggests the system itself is flawed, regardless of an individual's qualification.
Okay, so if it's systemic, potentially discrimination, the next logical step seems obvious, right? Transparency. Make companies report the numbers, which brought us to that whole discussion about the UK and mandatory disability pay gap reporting. Seems simple. Get the data out, force change.
Well, yes and no. It sounds simple, but as they discussed, it gets complicated fast. It's a bit of a policy paradox. You absolutely need transparency for accountability. But the way you mandate reporting, organizations like the Business Disability Forum, they highlighted some serious risks.
They weren't against the idea itself then?
No, not against the goal. More worried about potentially harmful implementation, getting it wrong.
What really stood out to me there was just how tricky the data is.
Yeah.
It's not like gender, which is often reported as binary. Disability is way more complex.
That's the core problem, technically speaking. For mandatory reporting to mean anything, the data has to be consistent. But how do you define disability consistently?
Right.
Do you rely on people self-identifying? What about non-visible disabilities? Are people going to feel safe disclosing just for a corporate report?
Oh, good point.
And you've got different legal definitions everywhere, different company sizes. The BDF basically stressed that without a really carefully thought out definition and method, the data could be all over the place, inconsistent, maybe even misleading.
And there's that risk of unintended consequences. Yeah. You mentioned safety, disclosure. What if people feel pressured?
Precisely. Or what if the public data somehow stigmatizes employees? Imagine a company reports a big gap. Does suspicion then fall unfairly on the disabled employees themselves? Like, are they the reason?
Oof. Yeah, that's not the goal at all.
Exactly. So the policy designed to help could actually end up hurting, or at least increasing pressure. It means any mandatory system has to be designed so carefully. Confidentiality, support, making sure the data collection itself doesn't undermine trust.
Okay, so the ILO shows us the massive scale of the problem. The BDF says, hold on, let's be careful about the policy fix. It feels like walking a tightrope.
It does.
But were there examples of companies sort of bypassing the tightrope, just deciding to fix things proactively? I'm thinking of that big tech company example they brought up.
Ah, yes. Microsoft. That part was really important, I thought.
Why is that?
Because it showed a company moving beyond just compliance, setting a higher standard themselves. And their advocacy on subminimum wages in the U.S. was particularly striking.
Maybe explain that for listeners who aren't familiar. Subminimum wages.
Yeah, it stems from this old legal loophole in the U.S., Section 14C, of the Fair Labor Standards Act. Basically, it allowed certain employers to get special certificates to pay workers with disabilities less than the federal minimum wage, often based on some assessment of their productivity.
Wow. Okay.
So Microsoft taking a public stand against that, it's a direct challenge to the idea that someone's disability could ever justify paying them below the basic minimum standard. It's a really strong statement on equitable pay.
That is a powerful example. A
Yeah.
company that big saying, no, we don't support this practice. That sends ripples, surely.
Absolutely. It sets a benchmark. And their commitment wasn't just about U.S. policy either. The session pulled together several practical things companies can do globally to improve wages for disabled employees. Proactive stuff, not just waiting for reports.
Like what? What were some of those strategies?
Well, first, simply ensuring minimum wage policies actually include everyone. No exceptions or carve-outs for disabled workers. If you do the job, you get the minimum wage, period.
Seems fundamental, but clearly necessary.
Yep. Then there was using collective bargaining union agreements.
How does that help specifically with disability inclusion?
Unions can negotiate for things beyond the legal minimum, so they can explicitly build disability pay equity reviews into contracts, or secure funding for accommodations that doesn't come out of compensation budgets, or set up clear grievance processes for pay disparities. It adds another layer of advocacy and protection.
Ah, okay. Using existing structures.
Exactly. And finally, they talked about wage transparency measures again, but from a different angle.
Not mandatory reporting, but
proactive internal transparency. So the company itself digs into its own pay data, looking for gaps based on disability status, and then fixes them internally before anyone complains, before any report is due.
Like an internal audit focused purely on equity.
Pretty much. It's driven by a genuine commitment, not just fear of getting caught by regulations. It's about using data for good internally.
Like how they tied that together. The need for transparency, yes, but doing it in a way that builds trust, that actually helps employees. It felt practical.
That combination was key, I think. You had the ILO showing the scale, the BDF warning about policy pitfalls, and then Microsoft showing what proactive leadership looks like. Right. It maps out where the work needs to happen.
So if we bring this all together for you, the listener.
Yeah.
We started with that stark ILO data, the huge, often unexplained pay gap, proving we need to shine a light on this.
Right. The need is clear.
But then we saw the policy path is tricky. Mandatory reporting needs incredibly careful design, so it doesn't backfire and harm the very people it's meant to help.
And the core message seemed to be that real solutions need everyone working together. Businesses, policymakers, and crucially, disabled individuals themselves have to be part of shaping these practices. It's not a one-off fix. It needs constant checking and adjustment.
That integrated view, global data, specific corporate actions like challenging 14C, careful policy design. It really does show change is possible, doesn't it?
I think so.
Honestly, the full session with the experts from the ILO, the Business Disability Forum, and Microsoft, it had so much more detail and actionable stuff than we could cover here.
No, absolutely.
If you're interested in this topic, it is definitely worth watching the whole thing from start to finish.
Agreed. Highly recommended.
But let's end maybe back where I started with that finding that really stuck with me, that unexplained part of the pay gap. Just think about what that means. If the standard metrics, education, experience, skills can't account for why one qualified group earns less, what does that say about the assumptions underlying our whole idea of meritocracy? What hidden biases about value are really driving things? And how do we even start to measure those to fix them?
That's the deep question, isn't it?
Yeah. Something to definitely mull over.